Welcome everyone to your favorite annual show, the MLB Pick'em with Shane Sandersfeld, David Brown, and Stephen Geller. It might not be your favorite show after last year because I think anyone who decided to side with some of our picks might have lost some money. Just to recap last year, um, I'll bring the good in there. Dave Brown had the best record out of all of us, 17-13. That was the good. I was over 500, 16-14. All right. Shane was 4-1 in his best picks. That's pretty good. Let's just not talk about the rest. We also, one thing I'll bring up about Dave Brown too that I think everybody should know, because he probably deserves props for over all of us in this respect. We've been doing this now for 4 years, 3 years on video with the three of us. Dave Brown with the best record overall the last 4 years at 65-46. For 65, 60, 64-56. Sorry, easy for me to say. And you actually also have the best bets record at 12-7. Shane and I are both at 11-8. So if you guys just follow our best bets, I think you'll be okay. So that's where we're at right now. I know we're going to try to keep this going pretty quickly, but anyone, Dave, Shane, do you guys have anything to say before we get started?
I'll let Dave go first as he is kind of the preeminent baseball mind.
I will just be going by my guiding principles that the Angels will win 77 games every year.
Those are pretty good principles to stick with.
Yeah, I'm just going to add in that there's a reason why they call them best bets. It's because those are the ones we like the most. So keep following those, and I think you'll be in good shape. And I do believe, as Steve has said, we will be better across the board than just the best bets this year. That's my guarantee for 2024 for the three of us.
I think so too. I think last year was a blip. And the one thing I'll say about last year is there were several teams that kind of faded down the stretch at the very end that just completely screw us over. And I think we'll be better this year. So we'll get started with the geographical division that is closest to Shane and I, but that we probably don't care about as much as the other Central, the AL Central. And the place where we're going to start off, we'll package two teams together again. I'm going to go Cleveland Guardians. They are 79.5 over under, and Kansas City Royals, they are 73.5 over under. Shane, I'll start with you on these, and then we'll go around.
I'll start with Cleveland. Do you want me to do both Cleveland and Kansas City, Steve? Yep. We'll start with Cleveland. As you know from watching this podcast year in and year out, we're big believers in the St. Louis Cardinals, that it's kind of a set it and forget it team. Well, I think on the AL side, the Cleveland Guardians kind of fit that a little bit as well. I'm going to go with the Guardians on the over here because I believe this is a team you can avoid looking at who their lineup is, their rotation. They're just a really good baseball town that seems to play hard and overperform, I think, year in and year out. So I'm going to take over on the number here for Cleveland. I think this division actually is going to be competitive with multiple teams. I think they're all going to play pretty hard, pretty well. There'll be maybe one team that doesn't play very, very well for the AL Central, but I think it's going to be a really good division. I'm going to take the over on Cleveland, and we'll get to this a little bit later, but I'm very high on Kansas City. I think they have an outside chance to get into September within striking range of a few teams at the top, if maybe they could be one of them. I love their young talent. I think they are maybe the second best team going into the season. I like Seth Lugo. I think they've got some really good young guns. Obviously, Cole Reagans is a star, and I'm over on Cleveland, and I'm over on Kansas City.
I was just going to say, I didn't think you could go under at all just by the pure existence of Cole Reagans on Kansas City.
He's my guy. He's my guy. I'm willing to hitch my wagons to him here for the upcoming.
Why is he your guy?
I've talked with Steve about him the past, few years, and I just like the way he pitches. I like the way he performs. I think he's one of those guys that you don't follow a team and you watch him play or watch him pitch, and you kind of start following that team a little bit more. And I've almost adopted the Royals to a degree because I just think he's fantastic. I would say he could be, Steve, maybe the new phenom.
Oh, that's big. Even more than Chris Waters. That's high praise right there. So Dave, this is the interesting part here. One, you said before this podcast that you didn't want Shane's confidence to foil you into making picks that you didn't want to make. Second, we praised you a lot at the beginning of this podcast. this was probably one of your downfalls last year, the Royals. I think they were a best bet of yours last year, or you were
Because of
pretty high
Shane.
on them.
It's because Shane sold them on me. Why he was so high on the Royals.
So that's my question right now. You picked them as a best bet last year on the over, and they finished, I think, somewhere south of 60 wins or 62 wins. They were pretty low last year. What do you think about them this year, or them in Cleveland?
I actually like the Royals this year for non-Shane reasons. I think what they did was a very, very, very poor man's Texas Rangers, the way they built their pitching staff. I like these. They built their pitching staff with all 3 and 4 starters, 3 and 4 level starters. So I like what they did. All you got to do is get in, and I think they're gonna, like you said, Shane, I think they're going to compete for a wild card. So I'm going over on the Royals. And I'm going under on the Indians. Shane, you talk about set and forget it. Look what the Cardinals did for you last year. They they certainly forgot it.
They did.
And I know Steve likes obscure stats. No team with 2 nailers have ever made the World Series. So I'm going to keep that record going, and I'm going to go under with the Cleveland Guardians.
I think you forgot about the Cleveland Spiders who did it back in 1913. That's not true, by the way. As I don't think the nailer. It probably is true, but it's kind of like who are 3 people who've never been in my house before, and the Cheers Jeopardy answer. If for these two teams myself, I'm a little bit shaken with Cleveland because Shane, I had the same opinion that you did of them last year, and I'm 0 for 4 on them, by the way, just for full disclosure. So whatever I pick here, you probably should do the opposite of. Um, Last year, I kind of thought they were a set it and forget it team, and they just I don't know what it was. They just couldn't get out of their own way. They just could never dig out of a bad start last year, and I'm a little bit worried again with them this year. I look at the pitching staff, and Shane Bieber is a name that in the past inspired a lot of confidence, and I think he's kind of gone south a little bit. Carlos Carrasco, Dave, you got the experience with him at one point, and it's just hard to trust him at all. I don't love the pitching staff. I actually think the batting order is kind of a fun batting order. It looks like a tough one to get through when you look at it, but I am probably going to go with Dave on this one and go with the under, which means Shane, you're probably right on the Guardians this time around.
Well, I feel pretty good about that after you were saying you were 0 and 4 on them. So
I think that's a good play. That's a good way to feel. I think for the Royals, I'm going to agree with both of you. Last year was to me a pick between Detroit and Kansas City, who was going to be the team that could get over and do well enough. And I liked Detroit last year. Kansas City, that was the reason I didn't pick them. I couldn't pick both those teams to go over, but I think you might be able to do that this year, especially with me picking Cleveland under. I like a lot of the young hitters that Kansas City has. And I like the message that they sent to their team by signing Bobby Witt to the long-term contract. I think that's a good message of we feel like this is going in the right direction. We're going to go out and get some pitchers to make sure we get better. I just think this team's moving in the right direction. I'm not sure I'm as high on them as you guys are, but I do feel like this is a team that should win about 75 games, 76 games. And I trust them to do that. And if Cole Reagans is, which I've heard a lot of people say what Shane said, that he's going to be very good. If he is really good, maybe that even jumps up in the 80, 81 range. So I'm going to take the Royals over. The next one that we have is I'm going to package them together again. We're going to go Detroit Tigers 80.5, and we're going to go Chicago White Sox 60.5. And this time we're going to start with Dave.
Wow, 80.5 is a tough one. I'm going to go under on Detroit, and I'm going under on the White Sox. I just don't see a path for them to not be one of the 2 worst teams in the league.
Shane, what's your thought on these 2 teams?
With Detroit, I'm gonna take the under, and I don't feel very good about it. I think their young stars might be a little bit better than I think. I expect Keith to be pretty good, maybe even a Rookie of the Year candidate. I like Skubal. I think he could potentially compete for a Cy Young. I just 88, getting up in the 80 range just seems a little high for me. So I'm going to go for the under on Detroit. And then kind of like I did double overs on Cleveland and Kansas City, I'm going to do the over. I am going to do the over on the White Sox, not by much. I think this is a great Vegas projection. It falls right around where I think these guys will end up. I'm going to try to hope that they avoid just all out quit in September and can get around that 60 win mark.
Yeah, one fundamental philosophy I've always liked, that Shane's brought forward is, I think you have, and it's been the opposite of what I thought before, but I think it's played to fruition, is those teams that look really, really, really bad is like they're never usually quite as bad. They can get that 60 or 62 mark, and that's one of them. I think I'm gonna go with Dave though on the White Sox because they just feel like their lineup actually has some pretty good names in it still. I just feel like that's a team that's trying not to win at this point. And they feel like the way Oakland's been recently, where it's just they're not even making any effort. They're trying to trade away as many people as they can. I feel like some of those good names in their lineups might be gone by the middle of the year too, just in the name of tearing it down and trying to be bad and trying to get it. It's a weird philosophy now though, because you don't automatically get the number one pick anymore, like when the Orioles were doing this to their fans. So I don't know what the light is at the end of the tunnel for some of these teams that are doing this. For Detroit, I think I have a kind of whatever special place in my heart for this team. I picked them last year and they delivered for me. And there weren't a lot of people who thought they were that good last year. I think they overperformed a little bit. I am looking at all the two projection systems have them considerably under 80.5, which scares me a little bit. But I do feel like somebody has to put up a fight against the Twins in this division. And Shane referenced it earlier. I do think Detroit and Kansas City could be two of those teams that actually push the Twins more than people think. So I'm going to go Detroit over. The next team that we have, we're just going to do one here to close out this division, and it's a team that Shane and I have dealt with quite a bit living in this region, the Minnesota Twins, the team that Shane he enjoys kind of seeing what they can do and sometimes poking them and seeing if they can underperform year after year. They're at 86.5 this year. And that's an interesting number to me. One big thing that I really don't like about this team is the loss of Sonny Gray. He was great for them last year. But what I will say is I thought even though Luis Arraez played pretty well for the Marlins, that Pablo Lopez trade was a great trade for them. They got what they needed out of that. They did absolutely what they wanted, and it worked. The other thing about the Twins that I don't think is a very well-told story outside of this market is they actually have beefed up their young talent pretty good. And they have some guys coming up from the minors. And I think this lineup is only going to get better as the year goes along and some of the young guys come up. The question is, can guys like Royce Lewis and we know Byron Buxton can't stay healthy, but can the guys that they need stay healthy? Can Correa have a good regular season? Because he was kind of disappointing last year. I'm going to go over with the Twins, but I don't feel really good about it because this team scares me to the point of like not being reliable. Even last year, they're good for most of the year, and then they ended up without 87 wins because they started to fall apart down the stretch. So Dave, I'm going to let you follow my long diatribe and let me know what you have to say about that.
Yeah, they're going to go over. They'll probably get 87, 88. They might even get 86 and tie. They're going to go over on the strength of just beating up on their own crappy division.
What do you think, Shane?
If you want an idea of how confident I think the three of us are this year with our picks, the only team that I had in my notes as a complete steal was the Minnesota Twins, and they didn't make my top 5 best bets. I don't understand this number at all. I figured Minnesota would be pretty close to the 90 range when I started thinking in my head where Vegas was going to set it, trying to project it before I looked at the actual number. And much like it seemed a little bit during our time there, Steve, when the Twins just got into a groove where for 4, 5, 6 years, you just could count on them to win the division and they weren't going to have anybody threaten them. I think they're back there again as we get into 23 through maybe 25, 26. I think they've got a great lineup. I mean, I was trying to find a way to kind of knock them down a peg or two, and I can't. I think it's a great overpick, and I don't think this is some sort of trap in any way, shape, or form. I think you pound Minnesota, the Twins, flying the number.
So we all agree on the Twins, and we're aligned on that. I think we actually had quite a bit of differences throughout the division, which is interesting. We're going to shift over to the AL West, and this is where Dave Brown has made his money over the years. Although I was surprised you weren't 4-0 on this team, but I'm going to let you start off with the Angels. Over under 72.5. No longer are they overvalued. Now they're just valued.
Yeah.
So what do you think? What do we say with 72.5 with the Angels? Does your theory still apply?
Yeah, over. They're going to win 77 games.
That's fair. You've got the number pegged no matter what. Shane, what do you think about this team?
This is a team that has driven me crazy for as long as we have done these projections. And I just, not only do I not like this team anymore, I'm not a believer in this team anymore. If they couldn't come through with me with the talent they had before, do you think I'm going to touch this team with what they're looking at heading into 2024? I'm going under on the Angels, and I will preface, I am terrible with projections on the Angels. And even though I waited for Dave to go first, I probably should follow him, but I'm not, because that's how much disdain I have for this organization right now, under on the Angels.
I think I'm going to agree with Shane on this. I actually don't mind the lineup. Nolan Chanel is kind of an interesting guy who played in the majors the same year he got drafted. Those are pretty rare. He got that experience, and I think that's going to help him a lot this year. And Mickey Moniak came over and played pretty well. Obviously, Trout, I mean, if he's healthy, he's still pretty good. And Rendon is never healthy, so you can't really count on him.
He doesn't even want to play anymore.
Yeah, he doesn't even want to play, exactly. So where this team kind of falls apart for me a little bit is the pitching. I'm just looking at the rotation. Patrick Sandoval, Reed Detmers, Chase Silseth, Tyler Anderson, Griffin Canning. The only name I really even partially like there is Detmers. It's kind of an ugly rotation. And then you look at the rest of this division. And that's what really scares me, is they are playing in a loaded division with a really good Astros team, with a manager who's got a chip on his shoulder to prove he can keep it going. You got the Texas Rangers. We'll talk about all the other teams here, but I'm going to go under with this play right here. The next one we got, we'll do two again. We have the Houston Astros, and they are sitting at 92.5. And then we have the Seattle Mariners at 87.5. And I'll let Shane go on this.
I'm not really understanding this number, and I'm also not understanding. I keep hearing from a lot of people who are looking at the under on the Astros, and I can't figure it out. This is a team that just seems to find a way to get mid-90s or higher every year, and this number seems low to me. I'm going to be very interested to see what you guys have to offer up here. I'm going to go with the over on Houston because it just seems like a common sense play. It's going to either be a Vegas trap or a Vegas giveaway. I'm going to lean with the giveaway here because I think Houston's, I look at their lineup. I still like their lineup. I'm still a believer in this team. So I'll go with Houston on the over, and then Seattle, I'm going to take the over as well. I think they've got the right-handed starting horsepower that's really going to, do them well. And I'm a big Scott Service fan. I think he's a pretty good coach, a pretty good manager. So I'm going to go over on Seattle as well.
Dave, what do you think of these two teams?
I'm doing the double over also. I was surprised that, just like Shane, at how the Astros, I remember years where they were like projected, the over-under was like 103, and that was ridiculous. And I said under, and they went over. I'm going over on them, and I'm going over on Seattle because I really like their pitching.
I think I'm going to stick with you guys with Houston. I like Houston as an over, and this is a team I actually do well in picking. I'm 4-0 on them the last 4 years. I agree. That's such a loaded talent group. And again, I think, with Dusty Baker, I really feel like last year was a year where I think they were actually under this number last year. They didn't win that many. I think they won 90 games last year. But I felt like last year they really were, as much as a baseball team can do it, they really were kind of, let's just get to the playoffs and figure it out from there. And I don't think that's going to be the case with a new manager in Espada. He has to prove, I can do what Dusty did and I can make this team really good. So I think this team is going to push a little bit harder in the regular season than they have the last couple of years. I am going to be contrarian when it comes to Seattle, who I've actually really liked the last couple of years. One of the things, though, I have to feel like Julio Rodriguez, who I felt like struggled at times last year, is really going to be better this year. But I don't love this lineup. And I think it did struggle at times last year. I do like the staff. I mean, the top three in Gilbert, Kirby, and Castillo, that's a very good top three. Might be the best top three in the AL. It's right up there. But what I don't like is I don't like the lineup. And I also, again, like I said earlier, this is not an easy division. You got Texas coming back. Texas won the World Series, and I don't think that was a fluke what they did last year. They've got great young talent. They've got returning veteran talent, and they've got pitchers who were injured last year who are coming back on top of what they did. So, and I still feel like, and maybe something just happened yesterday or today that I don't know about, I still feel like Jordan Montgomery is going to eventually default to going back to Texas. And I think that could help them too. So I'm going to go under with Seattle and go from there. The next teams that we have, this is the one where you really have to weigh your theory, Shane, of like how bad can a team actually be. The Oakland Athletics sitting at 56.5. I mean, that is an insane over-under number. That they're basically just they're calling them not a major league team at this point. So you've got that number, and then I'm going to pair that together with the Rangers, who are 89.5. And I guess I'll take both of those to start off with. I feel like Oakland's another team I've had a decent beat on through all this. That number just it has to be too low. Although, they won 50 games last year. Their projections in the Pacoda and Zips are like 64 wins. That seems like too many. Don't you feel like, though, they have to stumble into at least 57 wins? It can't be that hard. They have to be able to do something. I'm asking for a 7-game improvement on last year. And they've got some young guys who started to play well. Some things that you could actually get a little optimistic about. They actually signed Alex Wood and Ross Stripling. So I'll give them a little bit of credit, as opposed to the Orioles, who are actively trying to lose and sign absolutely nobody when they were doing their tank job. The A's are at least pretending like, maybe we can try to win a game here or there and fall into that. So I'm going to go over with the A's. And on top of that, I'm actually going to go take the over as well with the Rangers at 89.5. I know, this team, especially when you look at the rotation, it doesn't have, you have Scherzer injured, you have DeGrom injured. They're probably not going to factor too much into this year. But like I said, I still have to feel that Montgomery's going to do something at some point and sign back with these guys. And you know what? My biggest regret of last year when we broke down the Rangers is none of the three of us mentioned that Bruce Bochy was the coach. And I think that was a big X factor we all missed out on. Absolutely. And I remember turning on the first series of the year and going, we all picked over. We're right. But I can't believe that we didn't just mention that and hammer that for that very reason. That guy can flat out manage when the chips are on the table. And I'm going to go over, even though, contrary to what I'm going to say, he does have an under 500 career record during the regular season. But I'm going to go over with the Rangers. Shane, what do you think about these two teams?
With Oakland, the number is so low, but I do not think they're the worst team in baseball. And actually, if you look at how they finished August and September last year, no, they weren't playing 500 ball, but they were playing significantly better than what they did in the first 3 or 4 months. And I'm going to kind of go with the fact that I think that's going to lead into a better 2024. I know a lot of people hate their starting rotation. I actually think they might make a few things happen. I mean, you're not asking them to do much, right? You're not asking them to put forth this rotation that would rival, the Mets pitching from the mid 80s. I mean, this is a team that just needs to be a little bit stable, just be a little bit below average. And I think they will. I'll take the over on Oakland. And then on Texas, I'm a big fan of a lot of things going right the next year. I'm going to bet a lot of things go wrong. I think there's too many variables with Texas. I don't like all the injuries. I don't like assuming that when the good guys come back, it's all just going to fall into place and they're going to start, winning games left and right. I think Texas might be a regression team this year, one of two that I've kind of spotted, and I'm going under the number on Texas.
Well, the projections back you up on that. 89.5 the over under. The two projections have them at 85 and 86. What do you think about these two teams, Dave?
I am so upset that Shane went first because he literally has the same analysis that I do on both those teams. The same thoughts. When you
I have access to your computer, Dave.
Well, when you sent the rosters and I saw the pitching staff for the Oakland A's, and I saw that they signed those two guys, and I remember J.P. Sears. He wasn't, he's mediocre. He's mediocre, and mediocre is 60 wins is mediocre. I mean, they can do that. So I'm going over on both. Over on Oakland, under on Texas, because Texas, what I expected Texas to have. Did I really pick over on Texas last year?
I think you did. Yeah. I think you waffled because I thought you picked under too. And then when I looked at it, that you had actually picked over. So.
Yeah, I seem to remember thinking that Texas was going to go down the road of those old San Diego Padres teams that always binged and then never succeeded and always threw up before they won. And I just think it's I'm gonna keep that prediction. Just think it's gonna happen a year later.
Okay, well that sounds good. I'll have you as the under. Yeah, I guess probably I'm a little biased from watching them just smash the Orioles skull in the postseason and just see how they're good, because I really like a lot of their young hitting and I feel like they can hit their way through a lot of stuff. But it'll be interesting to keep our eye on that. We're going to go to the next group, which is the other division that doesn't have any of our teams in it, the NL West. And two of these teams already got started today. They played in Korea. Dodgers beat the Padres. So when we do the Dodgers over under and the Padres over under, just remember -1 for the Padres, +1 for the Dodgers. They're already on their way to how many ever absurd amount of wins they're going to win this year. We'll start off though with the runner-ups last year, the Arizona Diamondbacks. And Shane, you and me cashed in on this team last year. 74.5 last year was such an absurd number. That was the worst. I think that was the worst number by Vegas last year. They just swung and missed on that team. I don't really know if that was a pun that was intended. I'm not sure, but they just did a terrible job on that team, and I really like the young talent on that team. This year they're 83.5, and Dave, I'm going to start with you on them.
I swung and missed last year on Oakland, didn't I? On Arizona. Yeah, what is the number this year? 83.5?
83.5, yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna go over.
What do you think on the Diamondbacks, Shane? I know they were a best bet. They were, I think, if I remember correctly, they were like your #1 best bet last year, and you rode that one all the way home.
They were among the 5 best bets. I had them down as my numero uno best bet, and since they were so good to me last year, I'm going to go with them again. I love the front end of this rotation. I think this is a team that's going to challenge for a playoff spot in some way, shape, or form, and I think they're starting to be one of those teams that's, I think, turning the corner and could start to be considered a regular for the playoffs each and every year. And I'm big on the Diamondbacks again this year.
I really liked last year when their GM said, I'm trying to remember if he said this about the postseason or if he said this about the regular season, but he admitted, he said, the one thing I really regretted during the trade deadline is we didn't really get a good frontline starter, and I thought we could have used that in the postseason. He repaired that right away by signing Eduardo Rodriguez. I'm not a huge fan of Rodriguez, but I like that they went out and proactively addressed that. And I agree. I think this is a team, just a lot of young talent. They have to have gained. I mean, I know this is like one of those teams, the NCAA tournament, that makes like a run to the Final Four, and then you go back the next year and you're like, they're not a Final Four team, actually, are they? But they are a team when you look at 83.5 wins, where you go, I think this can be an 85 or 86 win team, and that's why I'm going to go over as well with you guys on this. This is our favorite.
I'm in that neighborhood. I'm not as high as Shane is, but I'm in that neighborhood. And Eduardo Rodriguez's agent thanks you for calling him a frontline starter.
Yeah, I did not call him a frontline starter. I said they wanted to get a frontline starter. Eduardo Rodriguez is not necessarily a frontline starter, but Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, Eduardo Rodriguez, that's not a bad 1, 2, 3. It's a 3. He doesn't disappoint you as a 3. He'll just be good or good enough, I think. This is our favorite one to do every year, and Vegas loves messing around with us. The LA Dodgers, 1-0 already. They're over under this. I mean, they keep messing around with us. 103.5 this year. So they are just playing a game with chicken with us and going, yeah, they always go over. What do you guys think? So, Shane, I'm going to start you off on this one. And actually, I'm going to give you one more team to go along with this to keep us going. Giants are also over under at 81.5. So you got Dodgers 103.5, Giants 81.5.
Well, we'll start with the Dodgers, and you guys already know what's coming here. If it's a game of chicken, I have ducked out every single time and lost. I'm 1-3 in the last 4 guesses on the Dodgers. 103.5. I get it. It's a team that everybody's already putting into the World Series. I guess I'm old school. Almost 104 wins is just insanely high to me. I mean, if anything goes wrong, you are in peril. And I've been burnt on this year in and year out that I guess the team doesn't face peril, but I'm going to say they're going to find a little bit this year. I mean, kind of in the same way that we said a few of these teams with low numbers just had to be mediocre. The Dodgers just have to be a little less than unbelievable. And so I'm going to take the under on the Dodgers, and I'm sure I'm going to regret it. And on San Diego, San Diego.
Oh, San Francisco.
San Francisco. I'm sorry, San Francisco. The number we're getting for San Francisco is 81 and a half.
Yeah.
81 and a half. With the Snell move, I thought we were right in kind of the 80 to 82 range. I thought it was a good line by Vegas, but with Snell, I think you have to take the over on this one. And San Francisco is a team that I think a couple years ago really flew the number and surprised Vegas, and then there was some regression, but I think they get back to it this year. I think they go over being 81 and a half.
And one piece that I'll add on to this number. I think I sent this out to you guys on Monday, I want to say, maybe Sunday. I think it was Sunday. So that was before the Snell. I'm not sure if it's gone up or gone down. We're just going to go with it for 81 and a half. So maybe we're giving ourselves a little padding into it. But 81 and a half is right now. So I'll go, I guess, next on that. And I'll try to tackle the age-old Dodgers question. The Braves won 104 games last year. I want to say the Dodgers won last year. They won 100, but I want to say the year before they actually did go over this number. And this lineup is just it's ridiculous. I mean, the top three of Betts, Ohtani, and Freeman. Ohtani's going to get hurt at some point this year. He always does. So I mean, it might not be for a long time, maybe 10 or 15 games. But they also have Teoscar Hernandez batting seventh. I mean, they have a good prospect at just about every position. Their pitching isn't great. I mean, James Paxton, is that someone they're really relying on? But Yamamoto, I'm very fascinated to see what he can do for a full season. I'll bite. I'm going to play this game of chicken. I'm going to go over 103.5. I know it's ridiculous, but I think Vegas is trying to test us. They're trying to say, you guys know they're going to go over. So we're going to make them mark so high that we're going to challenge you. And I'm taking the challenge. I'm going to say over for the Dodgers. As for the Giants, I think you're right. I'm not a huge Snell guy. I think he's due for a pretty big regression because of all the walks last year. I think the market reflects what he is. And nobody wanted to spend a 5-year contract on that guy. He's had 2 really good years in both leagues and I think he won Cy Young in both leagues. But the thing is all the other years are kind of littered with good but not great. And so I don't know if I totally trust him, but I do think, to your point, Shane, I mean, you have Logan Webb. Kyle Harrison's a really good pitching prospect. I have no idea what's going to happen with the Jordan Hicks experiment. That's going to be fascinating. But I think this team's good enough. I think they win 82-83. What do you think, Dave? I'm going over, by the way.
I find some of the things the Giants did strange. I feel like they were starting with Judge, and then I think even with Ohtani, they were dying to spend money, and to bring in a huge star, and they got spurned both times. And then I feel like they just decided to spend money anyway, and they ended up with the Korean guy in center field. Is he a center fielder? Snell, Chapman. I just feel like they're just spent money for the sake because it was burning a hole in their pocket. I don't particularly like what they did. I said the same thing about the Cubs last year. It was wrong, so I'm gonna be wrong again, potentially. But I'm gonna go under with the Giants. The Dodgers, I really want to go under because I look at that pitching staff and I'm not incredibly impressed. Especially, I don't know what Yamamoto is going to be. No one knows what Yamamoto is going to be, and I'm so amazed at how certain a lot of people are about him. I mean, he could be Hideo Nomo from year one, or he could be the Fat Toad. You don't know. We don't know. Do we know? Shane?
We do not.
We do not know.
We do not.
So I'm going under with the Dodgers.
Okay.
And I also think that teams are going to, at some point in time, we're going to have to are going to figure out that they don't have to go crazy in the regular season. They just have to get in. And they're not going to put pedal to the metal through September. They don't have to.
Great point.
Yeah, the only thing that I will say about the Dodgers is when they brought over what's the executive names from the Rays, who's their president of operations. I'm trying to remember his name. Ever since they've merged the Rays philosophy with the money that they have, they've just been unstoppable. I mean, they always seem to have the right combination of prospects, big money guys. It always seems like their big money guys come through for them too, which is impressive. So that's why I'm going for it. But I already made my pick. I don't need to stick up for it. I'm just wasting time. Next one, we'll do the twofer with the Padres and the Rockies. Padres 83.5, the Rockies 60.5. And Dave, I'll start with you.
Padres under. They gutted their pitching is gone. They've gutted their pitching. They have no one left except for you, Darvish, who already lost the game. I don't think he was the losing pitcher. Shane used to laugh at my jokes, and now I'm not encouraged to make jokes anymore. He used to be my best audience, and now he's not laughing. So now I think I've lost something here.
You've been thrown for a loop now.
Have you watched your fastball?
Yeah, and Juan Soto wasn't Ted Williams when he was there, but he's still Juan Soto, and losing him out of the lineup is not a plus, it's a minus. So I'm going under with them. And the Rockies, I think they're right there with the White Sox as one of the two worst teams. 60 is the number.
60.5, just to trip you up.
60.5. Let's go under. They're going to win 60.
What do you think, Shane?
I'll start from the back end. I'll go with Colorado. I don't think they're the worst team in MLB, but they're definitely close. I think this number is pretty darn accurate. I'm going to lean on the over a little bit, but I would say this was probably one of the top three teams that I just really struggled with. I mean, it was back and forth. I'm going to go over. Obviously, you can tell not my most confident play I'm going to make. And with San Diego, the past 4 or 5 years, I kind of feel like the Dodgers are the Dodgers. Colorado's near the bottom. You got to kind of make a coin flip on Arizona. And then you got to pick out of San Diego and San Francisco. You got to figure which one of those you think is going to be better than the other. And I think there's Giants people and there's Padres people. I'm on the Giants side. I am going under on the Padres. You
could do what I did. I went under on both.
Yeah, or you could try to cover your bases and go under on both. Kind of like sitting down at the roulette table and putting $50 on red and the other 50 on black.
Or you could do the other option, which is what I'm going to do, and you can go over on both. I feel like I'm looking at this Padres roster, and we keep talking about them getting gutted. I mean, they have Bogarts, Tatis, Cronenworth, Machado. Jackson Merrill is a great prospect.
I said their pitching was gutted. Their pitching was gutted.
But Darvish, Musgrove, and Cease, that's a good starting three. It's not bad. Snell is what we're thinking about getting gutted. And I actually think it's kind of fascinating. Johnny Brito, I watched pitch for the Yankees, and he's not the greatest pitcher in the world, but as a fifth guy and a good experiment, he could be okay. And I'm actually, the same way I'm fascinated with Jordan Hicks, I didn't even realize this until I started looking at this, is Michael King is going to be a starter for them. I liked him out of the Yankees bullpen. He seemed like one of those guys who could pitch every day and still be the same. And I'm just interested to see what this team does. I don't think this team wins. I mean, I can't pick the Dodgers to win 104 games and think that the Giants and Padres are going to be great. So, I mean, they're going to be like an 84, 85 win team. They're still going to be trailing by 20 games at the end of the year to the Dodgers. But I think I'm going to go Padres like 84, 85. And I'm doing that because I just think the narrative is too heavy on this team being like bad and gutted and not right. And the narrative has been too much the last 4 or 5 years. This team's going to be awesome. They signed this guy. They signed this guy. I think the narrative is driving a lot of the betting on this. And I think I'm going to go over with the Padres here. For Colorado, I think I'm going to stick with Dave. I mean, I'm going to go under because I can't pick the Dodgers to win 104 games. Pick the over at the Giants. pick the over of the Padres and not have the wins come from somewhere. I think a lot of these wins come at the expense of the Colorado Rockies. So I'm going to go under just for that reasoning. That's the West, man. It sucks to be Oakland and it sucks to be the Rockies. You are just you may as well just be a big punching bag with your, with the target on your face as they just beat you to a pulp. No thanks. I don't want to be either of those fans right now.
I think you should have gone over on all of the teams in that division and just said they're not going to lose any games to any AL teams.
Well, that is also a possibility. I could have done that. That would have been an entertaining way to go forward with that. So now we get to the point, and this is always one of my favorite points when we start talking about the divisions that our favorite teams are in. I'm buying a little bit of time here because I'm missing one of the NL Central sheets as I'm looking here. But we can start off with what I do have in front of me. And what I do have in front of me, I'm going to hand it over to Dave. Milwaukee Brewers and St. Louis Cardinals. Brewers are 77.5. Dave did a good job last year of zagging when we all thought that the Padres or that the St. Louis Cardinals were an organizational play. He identified them for what they were. But this year they're 84.5. So Brewers 77.5. Cardinals 84.5. What do you have for us, Dave?
I think that because the Brewers got so much worse, I think I'm gonna go over with St. Louis. I think they've stabilized themselves a little bit. Like Shane described with the Rangers, everything going right. Everything went wrong with St. Louis last year, and the organizational play in my mind here is that's not going to happen 2 years in a row. I think they stabilized their pitching, although I think Sonny Gray is hurt right now, but it's a long season. They're going to go over. Milwaukee, I think they're going to be right around 77. Great call by Vegas. Will they go over or under? I'm going to go with over, but like 78 wins.
Over. Okay.
So over on St. Louis, over on Milwaukee.
Over on both. I think I'm going to actually go over on Milwaukee with you. And it's much of the same reason that I'm going to go over on the Padres. Because I think the Corbin Burns trade has a narrative of, oh, Brewers are giving up. They're not doing much this year. They're on their way out. Outside of that, they're not really that much different. I think it's actually still a pretty solid lineup. They added Rhys Hoskins to it. They added Gary Sanchez. I don't know if that's an addition or not. That's going to be a lot of home runs, but I don't know what else. And then I will say another one I'm fascinated by because he really flourished as a reliever for the Orioles down the stretch. But he walked too many guys to be a good starter is DL Hall. I'm really interested to see what they can get out of him. I still feel like he could be a good starter. And man, can you think of a better place to go than Milwaukee where you just have zero pressure on you? You'll just go out and pitch. They're not breathing down your necks. It's just go out and do what you can do. And people will like you and it'll work out. So I'm going to go over with them. Man, the Cardinals are a tough one. They were so disappointing last year. And I have to say, I still like their lineup. I'm not sure if they fixed their pitching that much. I do like Sonny Gray. If he's healthy, he's fine. But Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson, those guys are inning eaters. But if I eat a bunch of Twinkies and ho-hos and, am I eating good calories? I mean, they're innings eaters, but I don't think the calories that they're putting down are very good for you. So I do think they're going to be a solid team, and I do think they bounce back. But I'm going to go under just because I feel like this team, it's hidden some of the bad organizational decisions that they've made recently. I mean, Adolis Garcia was a Cardinal. He was a hero for Texas. Rosarina, he got away from him. This organization has lost a little bit of luster for
Sandy Alcantara, right? Wasn't he from there?
I think so, yeah. So I'm going under on that, over with the Brewers. What do you think, Shane?
I think you guys are both going to cash some large checks on the Brewers. I have them as an overplay. I think what gets lost with the Brewers is I think their number is so low because people are saying, well, Craig Counsell's gone. They're going to fall off. He was a big reason. I think he's a great manager. I don't think he's so great of a manager that you set their number at 77.5. And we talk a lot of times about the lineup, about the rotation. Milwaukee's one of the top defensive teams in all of baseball, and they still have a really, really good bullpen. And I think Pat Murphy's going to do just fine. You will hear more about this play later when we get to the end of the show, but I don't see how you go wrong with Milwaukee here. And in other breaking news, I am finally taking St. Louis out of the organizational play, which kind of following a little bit of what I had down and hearing a little bit about what you guys say. I think St. Louis, I don't think they're that team anymore. I'm going under on St. Louis. I think Milwaukee gets the wins that Vegas thinks St. Louis is going to get. And so I'm high on the Brew Crew and I'm down on the Cards.
So to recap, last year, Shane and I said organizational play over with St. Louis, and Dave said under. Now this year, Dave says over, and Shane and I have changed our tune to under. We'll see how this goes. Dave's 3-1 on them. Shane, you're 2-1 on them. I'm 2-2. But yeah, I agree with you. They'll be in that 80 to 87 win, and who knows where that lands. But I agree. I don't think they're quite the set it and go team that they have been in the past. Our next two teams, I'm going to start off with Shane. We're going to go. So you got Reds at 81.5 and Pirates at 74.5.
The Pirates, I'll go with the Pirates first. I like the Pirates. I know you've had some great plays on the Pirates, Steve. The number is low, but I just really think that Pittsburgh feels the brunt of St. Louis, Milwaukee, Cubs, and the Reds. I mean, I'm down on St. Louis, but I'm not saying that that's a bum baseball team. They're still going to be good. I just don't see how the Pirates are going to survive in this division because I think everybody's still kind of on the up and up. And even if St. Louis is down, they're still probably better than average. So I'm under on the Pirates. And then Cincinnati, I'm going over because I think they figured a few things out with that late August, September fade. And I think they've got some really good talent. And I think they learned from how they played down the stretch last year that they're going to end up being better. I like Hunter Green. And I think that they're going to do pretty well. I think they're going to bounce back and have a really good season, at least better than around 81.5. So I'm taking the over.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on the Reds. Dave was the only one. I think he was the one who went over on this last year. None of us have really figured this team out. Our best record is 2-2, me and Dave. But I like over on them. I just love the young talent this team has. I like that they went out. I don't know if he'll be that great, but they went out and signed Jeimer Candelario. That was a fairly aggressive for a team that people don't think of as like a huge spender. And then the interesting one to me is, can Frankie Montas be healthy? I mean, the Yankees had big hopes for Frankie Montas last year. He was one of the guys that they were thinking, well, this is why we're going to be really good. We have a great pitching staff. So he's there now, along with, I know one of Dave's favorite, Hunter Green. And I mentioned Ashcroft and Abbott last year. They're all solid too. So I like the over for this team. Man, the Pirates are a hard one. I like the Pirates. I always enjoy cashing in on the low expectations people have for this franchise. But for reasons that I'll probably explain later, I'm going to go slight under on this team. I think it's like a 73, 70. It's right at this number. Vegas did a really good job on this number. Even last year when they got a great start, they won 76 games. So it's hard to imagine them getting a similar start. And to your point, Shane, it's a competitive division this year. It's gotten better, and it's a really fun young talent division too. So I'm going to go under on the Pirates. What do you think for these two teams, Dave?
Last year the Reds were 2 years early. They weren't expecting to do that last year, and they weren't expecting to do it this year either. But I think because they did it last year, I think to your point, they brought in a little bit of some veteran leadership. What's the number? 80 and a half?
81.5.
81 and a half. 81 and a half. I'll go this is so tough. The Reds Pirates is like what you were describing with the Giants Padres. This is my Giants Padres. What do you do with the Reds and Pirates? I'm going under with the Reds.
Okay. What are the Pirates? 74.5.
Pirates are 74 and a half?
Yep.
Oh, I thought they were 77. Yeah, I'm going over with the Pirates.
Over. Okay, now we get to the fun part of this, and I'm still looking for the starting lineup as my starting lineups have been thrown a little bit around all over the place. But we have Cubs at 84.5. And we'll get the definitive word on this from Shane from Shane. But for now, I will by time the projections actually have them going under Pacoda. They're 84.5. And the two projections have them at 82 and 81. Um, I'm interested to see. So when you look at the lineup, you've got a solid lineup up and down. I like the young talent that the Cubs had. And I mentioned this last year when we picked these teams. The one thing I really liked about the Cubs last year is they kind of cut down on the time. And Shane, you can probably attest to this. They cut down on that misery rebuilding time that fans have to endure. And they just said, let's make this team better right now. And the team, I think, responded. Some of the guys they signed were better than others, but I like the way they did this, and I think this leads to some positive momentum heading into this year too. It still is 84.5 is a really tough number in this division because it's a competitive division, and I don't know what to make out of it. I think I'm going to go with the slight over, even though I'm not hugely confident in this pick. I'm going to bank on the Cubs to just get to like 85 or 86. I think there's several teams in this division who could win this title. Actually, if you look, Reds, Cardinals, Cubs, and Brewers, to me, all those teams could make a claim that they believe they could win the title this year in the NL Central. But I'm going to go Cubs over. What do you think, Dave?
I go Cubs under, but like you, it's not by a lot. I go Cubs under. I I like their young, like Justin Steele's good. The Japanese guy is not supposed to be Imagana. He's not so good. I'm going under.
So the two big question marks that I'll ask you, Shane, because I think two of the things that Clay Bellinger was great last year and ended up being a great signing. And you could tell during the offseason they were playing chicken with each other. The Cubs going, we'd love to have you back, but we know you're not going to do what you did last year. Like you're going to be good, but you can't. Can't count on you doing that. So Bellinger kind of repeating and Eminaga, what he will be, I think, are two big questions for this team. Along with just where do they jump up from here? Last year they won 83 games, so you're asking them to add another 2 wins. What do you think, Shane?
I think there's a lot of positives pointing to the over here for the Cubs. As you know, I was really down on this team last year, and they surprised me. Kind of had a bad fate at the end of the season where it looked like they were a playoff lock and they gave it away. I think signing Bellinger was big, not so much for the fact of what he's going to do on the field, but it seemed like guys really rallied around him as a player, and he just started to carry that team on his back. He's not going to be as good as he was last year, and I don't think he needs to be. I just think he has to be somewhere in that vicinity. He's not going to play like he did. But one of the things that I really like about this team is, I talk a lot about teams. I like the front end of their rotation. I actually like the back end of the Cubs rotation from their pitching perspective. Is Hendricks at number 4. I think that's pretty good, and Hendricks is always going to give you innings. But I'm big on Javier Assad, and I actually really like Jordan Wicks. And I think by the end of the year, I think Wicks is going to end up being in the starting rotation. I think that kid is a gamer. And when you've got Steele as an ace at the top, I think Chicago has a lot to build on from a pitching perspective. And in terms of the lineup, what I didn't read on them last year that I'm buying into this year is these guys are grinders. As we used to say, these guys are going to bring their lunch pail to work every day, Steve, and they're going to show up and get to work. And that's the kind of team that I think gets you to around 87, 88 wins. And that doesn't even bring into play that they do have Craig Counsell now. And I think he's going to be a much needed addition. I think he's one of the best managers in the game. So I don't think this is one where if you take the over and you lose it, you say, man, how did I miss that? I think you take the over and run. And that's what I'm going to do with the Cubs. I'm pretty excited about this team to see what they can do. And I think they've got a postseason in their future.
Are you disappointed in their offseason? Because they didn't really do anything. They brought back Bellinger.
I think to Steve's point, I think they were maybe focused a little too much on Bellinger and didn't maybe address some of the other needs to see what they were going to do there. But I also I think they like the lineup more than some other people. And one of the other things I'm going to put into play here is they're going to be a team that makes additions in July. I think they're going to add some players that are going to get them over the top, because I think this is a team that's going to be hanging where they need to be from April, May, and June to put them in a position to add. And I think, yeah, they probably could have added a few more players and been for sure at the top of the division, but I think they're putting a lot of confidence in Council.
They're almost kind of building a team in a different way than other teams have, because I feel like they tore down the Epstein era of everything and went into full rebuild, but then they stopped right in the middle and signed some guys. But then this year they said, no, 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 we were rebuilding and we feel good about some of the guys in our organization. So it's almost like the last two off seasons, they've kind of done the opposite, to your point, Dave, of where you think they are. Like last year, people are like, aren't you guys rebuilding? Why are you signing all these guys? And this year, everyone's like, you guys were good last year, add on. And they're like, no, we feel good about what we have here. And we think that this can be a good team. And to Shane's point, like, to me, Horner, Happ, Morrill, and Tauchman are all grind. Those are all like guys who bring it every day to the park. And I think that'll be interesting to watch. I just remember when the Orioles played them last year, those guys were all a handful, and they made it tough. So it'll be interesting. I do think that team will be kind of a fun one to keep our eye on.
Well, and not to do a little revisionist history here, but I think the Cubs were probably like we were when they signed Bellinger. They were just getting a guy. I mean, everybody else kind of passed up on him as well. Nobody thought he was going to do what he did last year. And I think that was part of kind of stopping the rebuild and saying, maybe we can win now with some guys. So
I think we're probably showing them maybe we should just ditch all these other teams and talk about all of our teams and just have a good in-depth podcast about how good the Mets, Orioles, and Cubs can be. um, we're going to shift to the NL East. And Shane, I'm going to stick you with this one on the back end, because this is the other team that's just, I don't know what to make out of this. So we're going, and you've been good with this team. That's the other reason why I'm going to stick you with them, because you're the only one with a winning record on them. In fact, you picked them to win the World Series the year that they did. Atlanta Braves 101.5 over under. I'm also going to tack in Marlins 78.5. What do you got on those two teams?
I'll start with Atlanta. 101.5. That is a big number, and Atlanta is a really good team. But if the Dodgers are at 103.5 and Atlanta's at 101.5, and I'm taking the under for the Dodgers, I'm definitely taking the under for the Braves. I think it's a big number. I'm going to get to one of the teams in the division that I think people aren't real high on, that I think will eat away a little bit at what Atlanta can do. But I'm going to go under on Atlanta. And then who did you want me to come back with?
The Marlins are they're 78.5.
78.5. And the Marlins are probably in this division what the Diamondbacks are to me in the West. Love the Marlins, love how they're building. I think this team is fun to watch. And I think this lineup is finally getting some credit for being, I mean, a pretty decent lineup. I look at Miami and I see another over there. So I'm high on the Marlins in terms of their number, not necessarily to make the postseason, but I think they can be a 500 ball club.
Yeah, I have the same thoughts that you do on the Dodgers and the Braves, but I picked over on the Dodgers. And I'm looking at this and I'm going, hey, there's one thing, this Braves lineup cannot do what it did last year. That was the most absurd year that a lineup could possibly have, but it's sure not that much worse. I mean, it's a pretty good lineup, and up and down it scares you. And then you look at this pitching staff and you've got guys, I mean, everywhere. I saw Chris Sale pitched in the spring training game that I went to against the Orioles. And the Orioles have beat him up pretty well the last year and a half or so. And they did it again in spring training. But by all accounts, if you're penciling in Chris Sale as your number 4 starter, you're not really asking that much from him. I think he can be pretty good. So I'm going to, man, they cast the lure out there, and I just popped right to the surface on the Dodgers and Braves, and I'm biting. I'm going to go over with the Braves, and I think I'm going to join you with the Marlins. This team seems to have loads and loads of good young pitching. I know they have a lot of injuries from last year's group. Perez and Alcantara being hurt is tough. But I just feel like this is one of those teams, kind of like the Orioles have a never-ending supply of positional prospects. I feel like the Marlins are like that pitching-wise. And what I liked about what they did last year is their trade late in the year for Josh Bell. kind of solidified that lineup a little bit, and it showed down the stretch. And I think this lineup can be good enough to get them to the over. So I'm going to go over on the Marlins as well. Dave, what do you got for 101.5 for the Braves and 78.5 for the Marlins?
I'm going under for the Marlins. I agree with you. They have great young pitching. The problem with the young pitching is that there's, and I think it's a problem across baseball, but having great young starters isn't as good or as beneficial as it used to be because they baby them so much. So they're only in the game for 5 innings, maybe 6. And then they're relying on their bullpen. And then their lineup is the same as last year without Jorge Soler, so they didn't improve there. They got worse. So although Tim Anderson could have a comeback year, and there's no way Luis Arraez is going to have that good a season as he did last year. So I'm going under with the Marlins. I'm going over with the Braves. They annoy me enough that I'm going to get at least some pleasure out of it by saying that it's going to be over when they ultimately end up over.
Our next two, I guess I'll start with these. You got Nationals 66.5, and you got Phillies 90.5. I underplayed the Nationals quite a bit last year. I thought they were going to be horrible, and they actually had 71 wins last year. They weren't that bad. I still don't really love their lineup. They've got some decent hitters in it. I really don't like their pitching, but 66.5 is not a huge number to get to. And they got to 71 last year. Still, if I'm going to pick the Marlins over, I think I'm still going to stick with these guys as an under, and I probably will pay for it, but I'm going to go under. And then the other really tricky one is the Phillies at 90.5. I mean, if the Phillies could show up in the regular season like they do for the postseason, we'd be talking about them at 101.5 and not the Braves. But they don't seem to ever do exactly what they need to do, in the regular season. I do like the lineup that they've got. I mean, they always have a good lineup, and I think that it has the ability to be a really good team again this year. I like the fact that they locked up Aaron Nola long term. I think that's another one of those. They're willing to pay the big bucks for Nola, and the Mets who didn't want to pay Wheeler, they paid him. Still, I do think if I'm going to pick the Marlins to do well, and this one's a hard one. I guess I'm going to go 9. I'll go over here, and I think it's like 91 wins. It's not going to be too much, but the Phillies have a good enough roster that I think they can get to 91, 92 wins in a division where the Braves just run away with it. Who do you have here, Dave? Again, Nationals 66.5, Phillies 90.5.
I think the Nationals are good enough to beat 66.5. They're young. It's a pretty interesting young pitching staff that they have. A lot of those guys are prospects that they got in trades when they broke themselves down. Their lineup is not that great, but they stick Eddie Rosario in there as a veteran and Keibert Ruiz, who at some point may turn into a solid batter. CJ Abrams is someone. I'm just reading, but Joey Gallo is there, so he'll strike out a lot. But over Phillies, what was it, 90.5?
90.5. Yep.
I go under with the Phillies, but like you, just slightly over. They can hit 90.
Seems like the best way to go when you have doubt on a team is to go under when in doubt. Shane, what do you think on the Nationals 66.5 and Phillies 90.5?
I looked at the Nationals lineup and I got confused and thought it was a team that my son's 11U team beat last year. In Little League. I think they are the worst team in baseball.
Really?
They are my bottom of the barrel. I am going to pound the under here. I'm not impressed with their lineup at all. I think that this is a terrible baseball team, and I'm going to go under 66. I think we're getting a gift here. I would have had them closer to the 60, maybe even 59 range. I think they're going to take a pounding in the East. And Philly, Oh boy. Philly is the team where I'm going to do what Steve used to always do that I would love is I'm going to talk to you about how much I do love their lineup, how they got the best beer league hitters that I've ever seen that can just pop balls out of the yard like nobody's business. I'm big fans. I'm a big fan of Wheeler and Nola and some of these guys. But with that being said, I'm going to take the under. Because I think a little bit of what's happening is I'm thinking of the Wheeler and Nola in my head from a few years ago that were maybe a little more dominant. And the other thing that, and you guys brought this up, something happens with the Phillies in the regular season where they hit these patches where they lose 8 out of 9, they lose, 7 out of 10, and they just look disinterested. And then they got to start trying to rally at the end of the year. So I'm going to buy in a little bit to them having some bad patches and take the under on Philly.
Okay. Yeah. One of the things that's interesting to note is the Nationals, the one of the projection models has them finishing at 66. The other one has them at 58. So one of the projection models does agree with you, Shane, that they could be really bad. And for the Phillies, Dave and Shane, to your point, they're both projected to be way under 90. So we'll see what happens there. Now,
I have such a problem picking this division because it's so personal. I really I'll tell you the truth. Can I give you the Phillies are the team that I wish the Mets were. They made all the moves that I wish the Mets had. This is the team I wish the Mets were, and I hate it, and I hate them for it, and I hate myself for it too.
I'm glad we could have this episode of Taxi Cab Confessions, only all sitting in our own households.
I really wanted to come clean to you guys.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you did. I think you'll feel better for it when you wake up tomorrow. So we're going to go, now that you've come clean, we're going to go to your team, the New York Metropolitans. And Shane, I'm going to start off with you on the Metropolitans. They're 81.5. What are your thoughts on the New York Mets this year?
Sometimes the teams that surprise you the most are the ones that you never see it coming. And the Mets meltdown last year, that was, that was terrible. But what I think is going to happen this year is I think they're going to play maybe a little bit more Cubs ball to a degree of some guys are really going to get back to it. And I think they were embarrassed last year. I think the Mets come back really hungry. They're the team that I was mentioning that I think are going to eat at the totals of some of these other teams that you think are going to be over, who are not. They're going to be under. The reason they're going to be under, they're going to lose games to the Mets. I've got the Mets being, I have the Mets at 86, 87 wins. I really think that they bounce back, and I like their pitching staff. I don't care what anybody says. I'll take Severino. I'll take, I like Quintana. I think these guys grind this year like you haven't seen a Mets team grind in a while. And I think they're going to surprise some folks, and they're going to be over, and they're going to be in the hunt with 2 weeks to go.
I think I'm going to go over with you. The only place where I'll take issue a little bit is I just don't think that's the type of players they have. I think Nemo is that type of a player, maybe. Bader could be that type of a player.
Jeff
And Dave
McNeil
can tell
is.
me if I'm wrong about this.
Jeff
It
McNeil
just
is that
doesn't
type of
feel
player.
like a Lindor or Marte. Like they don't feel like those type of grinder players. So I don't know if I see that. And the other thing I really worry about with this team, those starters are all high variance guys. Like all four, Severino, Mania, Quintana, Hauser, could all win 15 games and have like a 3.50 ERA, or they could all like stub their toe on the first day of the season and just be out for the rest of the year. So I mean, it's just such a high variance with those guys. But I do agree with you in this one sense, Shane. They went from having the highest of high expectations, and I bid on it. I kind of just went along with the Buck Showalter logic of he usually gets the best out of the teams he coaches, and that just went into flames early last year and just didn't happen. But I also think the underrated part of the Mets, and they traded for some good young talent last year, is that they actually have some good young players that are in this lineup, despite the fact that people talk about Steve Cohen throwing around money and doing all this stuff. Like Francisco Alvarez was a good contributor to this team last year, and I think he can be good this year. You look at Vientos, like he's a good young player too. They've got some other guys who I think Beatty, is that what it is? Like these guys are all pretty good young players who I think you could be a little bit excited about as a Mets fan. The one I'm also interested for Dave to talk a little bit about is I honestly didn't even realize John Gibbons is the manager,
He's
former Blue
not.
Jays
He's the bench
manager.
coach. He's the bench
He's the
coach.
bench coach. Who is the manager?
Carlos Mendoza. He was the Yankees bench coach.
Carlos Mendoza. Okay, where did I get that name from? It was written down somewhere.
John Gibbons is the bench coach. He's with the
I
team.
know, but I just went on a list of managers and they had him there for some reason. I don't know why. So that's obviously wrong. But that's an interesting part of it to me is, I mean, he's still an experienced manager and he'll play a part of that decision making. And you got Mendoza. So I'm just interested to see, where you go from having a manager who kind of like knew all the nuts and bolts and everything for that. So yeah, I'm going to go over as well. That was a long explanation. I'll turn it over to Dave.
I know too much, so which is very dangerous, but here's what I know. I know that when they talk about how spring training is this year different than previous years, they're saying it's much more relaxed. You said great things about Bruce Bochy, but I feel like sports are going the way of, look, Belichick couldn't get a job. Dusty's out. Younger managers. I don't know if the older guys can relate to the. Look what happened when Girardi was fired. Right away, the Phillies became much looser and maybe these young players need a different type of leadership. So it's the looser spring training, the looser environment. It is what Shane was talking about with the Brewers defense, and it's David Stern's uh, influence that gives the Brewers that defense that puts them gave you the idea of putting the Brewers in over. He's that philosophy he's brought to the Mets, and he's very, 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 very high and puts a very big importance on defense. And there are a lot of young players ready to come up to fill in the blanks. If they have some good young starters that are almost ready to go, maybe as early as May or June if one of these starters falter or get hurt. They have Drew Gilbert, who is one of the guys they got from Verlander, who's ready to go if Harrison Bader struggles or gets hurt. They have Ronald Acuna's brother, who's ready to go if someone in the infield gets hurt or struggles. Jet Williams is also another prospect that they have ready to go mid-season. And it's a very just like the Royals had a very poor man's Rangers off season. The Mets had a poor man's Rangers off season by picking up serviceable starters to get you through 5 or 6 innings and turn it over to the bullpen. And they have a lineup that if the starter gives up 4 runs in 5 innings, you hope that they can overcome that and get to Edwin Diaz in the 9th. So all of that to say, what's the over-under? 81.5? Yeah, over.
And they've got Edwin Diaz.
And Edwin Diaz, right. Over and in the wild card hunt for at least the 3rd spot.
Okay. That's a good overall analysis of the Mets. I don't think I need to add any more onto that.
There's only one thing that I think we need to add to that. After hearing Dave's breakdown, I expect to hear a lot of hey.
That and the last thing I will add too is I believe Dave, out of all of us, is the only one who's undefeated the last 4 years picking his own team. He's 4-0, so that's good to know as well.
That is impressive.
It is. He has done a good job of being negative when he should be and positive when he should be. I thought last year he was being overly negative. I picked the Mets as a lock, and boy, was I wrong. So we'll go to my favorite division now, or at least the division with my favorite team. I don't know if they're my favorite division. We're going to start off with the Blue Jays and the Rays. We got the Blue Jays at 86.5 and the Rays at 84.5. And Dave, I'm going to let you, since you just got done with the Mets, I'll let you continue right on your line of commenting and just let you go right after these teams.
I think this is the year that the Rays take a little bit of a step back and have to reevaluate themselves, that maybe it's just not going to happen this year. Just because I don't know how they keep doing it. And because I don't understand it, I will bet against it and go under.
And then we got the Blue Jays at 86.5. What do you think for them?
Blue Jays at 86.5 is a very interesting number. They have a very solid rotation. Solid. Jose Barrios is probably their best starter. Kevin Gausman, he's not hurt? He's all right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. And Chris Bassett is as reliable as it gets. Their lineup is pretty strong. They will win 86 games. What is the over under? 86.5?
86.5.
Okay, so they'll go under.
They'll go under. Shane, who do you have for these two teams? Rays 84.5, Jays 86.5.
Tampa Bay, I'm going to give you a little stat breakdown here. Over the past 5 seasons, Tampa Bay has had an average preseason win total of 85.3 and has finished with 94.2. I don't know if they're going to clear 90, but man, they just keep turning unheralded arms into superstars. And I think they're my new one. I'm going to put in an official organizational play, out with the Cards, in with the Rays. So I'm happy to take, Rays and Cubs at 84.5. I'll take it. I'll go with the over on Tampa. And then Toronto, I like the pitching staff. I like the pitching staff for Toronto. I'm not sure I think the lineup's going to keep up this year. I don't know if I'm as sold on it. And we're going to get to a few more teams here that I think might hurt Toronto a little bit. So I'm under on the Blue Jays while I'm over on the Rays.
Yeah, the Blue Jays are a tough one. I can't believe I'm going to fall in this trap, and I know I'm going to regret this. I'm going to go over on the Jays, and it's very similar to the rationale that I've had with a couple of other teams. They've been like everybody's hot team to pick the last couple of years, and I don't think they're that different. And everybody now is kind of like so-so on them. I mean, 86.5. It's not like people think they're going to be bad, but I just think they're being just slightly undervalued. I think they can win 88 to 89 games, although I think the last 2 years they've really made us sweat at the end, and I think they finished under in both of those years. So I'm going to go with it on there. And then for the Rays, this is where I'm going to be dumb because to your point, Shane, last year they were somewhere in the 80s and they won 99 games. They always shove this stuff in people's face. The only problem I have with them this year is they are decimated with pitching injuries. I mean, this is a year where you're missing McClanahan, Springs, and Rasmussen in their rotation. Shane Baz is coming back from Tommy John surgery. I'm looking at, I mean, Eflin and Savale are the two guys coming back who I recognize. And then to your point, it's just other arms that are probably going to step up and pitch well. I'm going to go slight under. I don't think they can be finished that much worse than 84.5. And I'm sure I'm going to be dumb for this because they always find a way around this. But I'm going to go slight under with the Rays here. For the next two, we got everybody's favorite team, the New York Yankees and the Boston Red Sox. The Yankees are 91.5 and the Red Sox are 77.5. And I guess I'll bite and go with this one. The Yankees, this team drives me crazy. I mean, it's everybody always loves them no matter what. They won 82 games last year and people have them winning the division at 91.5. It's kind of annoying when you look at this. And especially now that I root for a team that's actually good in this division, it's almost a little bit insulting that after the Orioles won 101 games and the Yankees won 82 games, then people are still going to turn around and pick the Yankees to win the division. That being said, it actually isn't a bad team. They're pretty good. And this Juan Soto trade, even though he wasn't great in San Diego, this feels like one of those late 90s, early 2000s trade where they give away a bag of baseballs for David Cohn or, for Roger Clemens. They get somebody who's really good and in the prime of their career for nothing. And that kind of annoys me. 91.5 is just hard. And that's why I keep talking around it. I think I'm actually going to go a slight over, and I don't know why. I don't like Aaron Boone as a manager. I'm terrible at picking the Yankees. I just have this fear that they are actually going to be a little bit better than people think. And so I'm actually going to fall for it and go over. For the Red Sox, 77.5. I'm going to go under just because I hate this team's pitching. Their starting pitching just does not look good on paper. I actually think we're going to wake up in 2 years and the Red Sox are going to be loaded with good young players, and they're going to have done this rebuild right. And then someone like Dave Dombrowski is going to come in and get to claim credit for everything that that the last GM got fired for, Chaim Bloom. But for right now, this team is frustrating Red Sox fans, and I'm going to go under with them. Dave, what do you have for these two teams? Yankees 91.5, Red Sox 77.5.
Stanton hit 3 home runs today in spring training.
Against two, I wonder.
I don't know, but if the pitching staff is without Cole, looks pretty sketchy.
Yeah.
Unless Rodon comes back and does what you expected him to do last year. Stroman is as number 3 a starter as a number 3 starter could be. Nestor Cortez, the opening day starter, I think he is just mediocre. So can this lineup overcome this pitching staff? And I think it can. I think they're going to score a lot of runs, and Juan Soto in Yankee Stadium scares me. So I'm going to go over.
How about the Red Sox? You're 4-0 in the Red Sox, by the way, just to note.
Am I really? I wish you didn't give me that pressure now. I will. I'm torn on the Red Sox. Like you, that pitching staff is pretty bad, and that lineup is not that good either. I got to go under on the Red Sox.
Shane, what do you have for the Yankees 91.5 and the Red Sox 77.5?
After filling out my March Madness bracket here the past few days, I found myself in many ways just finding reasons to pick against teams that I didn't like. And so one of the things that I did when I sat down for this podcast is I realized when I do my March Madness, it's just my money on the line. We got the people's money on the line right here. So I have to look at this with an open mind. And I'm shocked that the Yankees number is at 91.5. I mean, to Dave's point, Juan Soto hitting with Aaron Judge behind him in Yankee Stadium. This lineup, I mean, this is still an amazing lineup. And I just get this funny feeling that Marcus Stroman and Juan Soto are going to be these amazing additions that all of a sudden it's like last year didn't even happen. And here they come the Yankees, and and I'm a little worried that I don't want them to steal the thunder of the O's after the O's are getting back in this thing, but I have to go with the over on the Yankees. I mean, I think this is a really good lineup, and I think those new additions are really going to play well. Boston, it's still strange for me the past few years to have Boston's number be in the 70s. It just doesn't feel, it feels so awkward to me after all the success that they've had in past years, but I'm not sold on the pitching either. Like you guys, I don't think this lineup is going to be able to get it done. And while I'm high on Tampa, and I think Toronto might be under, I think Toronto's still going to be good. So I'm going to go under on Boston.
Just to note on the Yankees, we are all collectively 6-6. Shane, you've been the best at figuring out there. You're 3-1 on them, so we'll give you credit for that. Shane, I'm just gonna let you ride right into the Orioles. We got the Baltimore Orioles. They are sitting at 90.5. Just for some backstory, Shane, you did a good job nailing them 2 years ago when Dave and I both picked against them. That's my one blemish in my year as an Orioles fan. I'm 3-1 picking them. Last year you went against them and they just exploded. They were like 82.5 last year, and they shot by that with 101 wins. What do you think about them this year?
I'm dreading doing the Orioles because as much fun as I had talking about the Cubs and pumping up Dave's Mets, I don't have the same feeling for the O's. I am worried about the injuries. Kyle Bradish, Bautista. I'm a little concerned. I feel like there's going to be some regression from that amazing bullpen. And I've got a bad feeling about the O's this year. I'm not saying that I think they're going to fall off a cliff, but I'm not sure I think they're going to hit over 90.5. So I'm going to take under on Baltimore.
Dave, 90.5 is a pretty high number. I can't even remember the Orioles ever getting 90. Probably hasn't been since we've been in college that they've gotten over 90 wins in Vegas over-unders. And I don't even think I knew what over-unders were back then. So what do you think?
I'm super bullish on the Orioles. That lineup is incredible. Incredible. And they just keep bringing in these young players. And they have more to bring up. And if they don't want to bring him up, they can trade him for another great pitcher at the trade deadline, or beef up their bullpen if they need help. I'm going over.
You said the same thing about their lineup last year, and it was a pretty good lineup last year. It ended up being good, and they do have a lot of young players to go put back and forth. But the interesting thing about last year is it was a guy like Ryan O'Hearn who really solidified the lineup. Um, Austin Hayes had a really good year.
Well,
It was
yeah,
guys.
I saw that stuff coming.
Yeah, it was guys that you didn't necessarily even think would be there. And you're right, to your point, the exciting part is, I mean, Gunnar Henderson had a good year, but he was a rookie last year. I mean, he can be a lot better. The one big X factor in this, and I would assume that he makes the opening day roster, is Jackson Holiday. I mean, he could be what Gunnar Henderson was last year, this year at second base. And so it could be a really loaded offense. And I've really come to fall in love, and I think the Cubs have a little bit of this too. Man, it's just so much more gratifying when the reinforcements from your team can actually come from your own organization. And it just is fun to watch when that can happen. I'm also excited. I sat down with some friends who are Orioles fans in the offseason, and we said, what pitcher do we want to trade for? And a lot of people said Dylan Cease. And I said, I was thinking with John Angelos as the owner at the time, but I said, the one guy I want is Corbin Burns. Guy's a horse. He every year he gets to like about 180 innings. He's a very consistent pitcher, pitches starts, and he gives you high quality starts just about every time out. It's been a little shaky in spring training, but I really like him a lot. I think Grayson Rodriguez takes a step forward, and they do have Tyler Wells, who can I think fill a little bit going back and forth between bullpen and starter. I am like you, Shane. I'm actually kind of worried about the bullpen. I don't think people realize this. Felix Bautista, if you were to record maybe the top 10 or 20 all-time best bullpen years that a pitcher could have, Bautista was probably in that top 20 somewhere all time. I looked at some of these, like Eckersley back in the 90s. I mean, some of these guys who just had all-time years, some of the Bruce Sutter years and the Goose Gossage years, like Bautista was every bit as good as all those guys the way he pitched. And having that void this year is going to be a big void. All that being said, I really think this organization has just figured out how to win. They have a young core of players who believe they're going to win. The second Adley Rutschman came up, they won, and they just know how to win now. It's in their DNA. Spring training, they're 20-5 right now. That doesn't matter at all record-wise, but I just think these guys are wired that way now. It's just, we're not going to let you guys rest. We're not going to let you think we're going to take the step back. They're just going to keep playing and keep winning. And that's what I like about having a young core that all comes up together. So that's my long way of saying I'm going to go over in the Orioles. To your point, Shane, I don't think they're going to win 101 games. I think there's a regression coming, but I think that regression can be in the 92 to 93 win area. The part that I'm worried about that you pointed out, even though I'm kind of disgusted by the Yankees being picked ahead of them, it's a possibility. I mean, if that team mashes the way it's capable of, I think it's Yankees, Orioles, and then I think the Blue Jays could even be slightly in the mix. But I'm going to go Orioles over. So now we're going to get to the other part that we like, and I know my time management has been terrible tonight. This is going to be a long podcast, but we're going to go to our best bets, and then we're going to go for the picks around the league. We'll try to do it as quick as possible. So, Dave, do you want to start us off with one of your best bets? Oh, you're on mute.
How many do we pick?
We do 5.
Okay, I'm ready. St. Louis over.
St. Louis over. Shane, who do you have for yours?
I'm going to start with my number 5, and I'm going to go with Oakland being good enough to get a little bit over 60 wins. Oakland over.
And I think this was one that Shane said earlier that I actually agreed with. I like the Brewers over. Shane, do you want to do the next one?
Sure. I'll come back with the division we just closed out on. Bullish on Tampa Bay. I'm going to take the Tampa Bay over of 84.5.
Tampa Bay over. Dave, who do you have?
Oakland over.
Oakland over. So you're both going Oakland over. Um, I don't know where to go here. So now I'm kind of mulling around on what I wanted to do. You guys kind of talked me into this one. So I'm going to actually fall a little bit victim to peer pressure. I did this last year and it might be the jinx again, Dave. I'm going Mets over. Um, so for the next one, I'm going to stay in the division, and I think I'm going to let Shane talk me into this one. I don't have very many original thoughts on this one. Um, I like Miami over too. I think those two teams can actually be good. I don't know why I'm saying that because I think the Braves are going to win like 130 games, but I think the Marlins and Mets are both 500 or better teams, and you got the Mets at 81 and a half, and you got the Marlins at 78. So I'm going to go Marlins over. Shane, who's your next one?
I'm going to go to the Central, and Bernie Brewer is going to be doing a lot of sliding. I'm going to go with the Brewers to take the over.
So Shane is sharing picks with both of us. You and Dave are sharing the Oakland over, and then I am sharing the Brewers over with you. Dave, who's your third one?
My third one is going to be the Twins over.
Hmm,
Great pick.
that's a good one. Um, Shane, I'll go back to you again, and you can start us off, and we'll go back down the line.
It's always fun to be able to pick your favorite team in the best bets, and I'm going to go with the Cubs to get it done. Another 84.5 number. We're going to fly the total with the Chicago Cubs.
What do you have, Dave?
Uh, Texas under.
Texas under.
I'm too suspicious to make my team a best bet.
I'm going to go Cleveland under. It's maybe a surprise, but I'm going to take Cleveland under. I have to take an under somewhere, and I'm going to be stupid with my last one. This is where the heart's going to take over. I'm going to go Orioles over. I think the Orioles are a 90 plus win team. I don't know if they're too much more than 90 plus because 101 was kind of just came out of nowhere. They can't do that again, I don't think. But yeah, I like 90. I like over 90 and a half. Dave, who do you have for your last one?
All right, since you guys did it, I'm going to do it too. I'll take the Mets over.
This is about the most positive we've all been collectively. I mean, I'm not sure there's been a time when we've all talked and done this that all of our teams have actually been in a place where they could all be over 500.
Yeah.
Shane, who's your last one?
My last one is my number one best bet for the 2024 season. Best hand you can get in poker is a Royal Flush, and I'm going to taking Cole Reagans and the Royals. Bet the farm on over 73.5.
Man, what a relentlessly positive group. We just gave you 15 best bets, and 13 of the 15 were overs. We are just in a positive mindset today. I'm going to start off now going in the divisions. Let's go for the division winners in the AL first. I'm going to start with you, Shane.
My AL East representative is unfortunately going to be the New York Yankees. My Central representative will be the Minnesota Twins, who I think should not be challenged too much in that division. And then in the West, tough one to pick. I'm gonna hold serve with a team that just continues to get it done. I'll go with Houston.
What do you got, Dave?
Orioles, Twins, Astros.
I'm going to go. Yeah, it feels so weird after all this time to say Orioles, but I'm going to go Orioles AL East. And God, I'm being too positive here. This is all going to blow up on me. AL Central, I think I'll stick with the Twins as well. And I'm going to go Texas in the AL West. I think when they beat Houston last year, they laid the gauntlet down. That's going to be a good baseball rivalry. And I'm going with that. Who do you got for your three wild cards, Dave?
The Yankees,
Okay.
The Mariners and Texas.
Who do you have, Shane?
I'm going to go with my Tampa Bay Devil Rays, the Texas Rangers, and the Baltimore Orioles.
Okay, I'm going to go with the Yankees. I'm going to go with the Astros, and I'm going to go with the Toronto Blue Jays.
Can Shane repeat his again?
Sure. I went
Shane,
Tampa
go
Bay,
ahead.
Texas, and Baltimore.
NL East, or sorry, NL division winners. Dave, do you want to start us off? I keep putting it off because I don't know exactly what I'm going to say next.
Okay. The Braves, the Cardinals, the Dodgers.
Who do you have, Shane?
I'm going to match up with Dave on 2 of those 3. I'm going to stay with Atlanta and LA Dodgers, just like he did. And I'm going to switch out the Cardinals for your Cubbies.
Ooh, a lot of optimism across
Yep.
the board for favorite teams.
Yep.
I'm going to go Mets. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going Atlanta. I'm going to go NL Central. I'm going to go the Reds. It's a weird one, but I'm going to go Reds. And I'm going to be boring. I picked them to win over 103 games, so I have to pick the Dodgers. NL wildcard, Shane, who do you got for those?
NL wild card, I'm going to go with Arizona. I'm going to go with Milwaukee, and I'm going to go with the Phillies.
How about you, Dave?
I am going with the Phillies. I'm going with the Diamondbacks, and I'm going to go with the Mets.
Diamondbacks and Mets. Okay. I am going to go with the Phillies. I'm going to go with the. Did you say the Mets is your last one, Dave?
I did.
Okay. Oh, so we are all being up. I almost let that one slip by. I'm going to go Phillies. I'm going to go. I'm going to go Phillies. I think I'm going to go Diamondbacks too. And I am going to go with. I'm going to go with the Cubs as well. Who do we think is going to represent the AL, Shane?
Unfortunately, I'm going with the New York Yankees.
What about you, Dave?
The Orioles.
Wow. I'm going Astros. How about the NL, Dave?
Braves.
Braves. What about you, Shane?
I'm going to follow suit. Give me Atlanta.
I'm going to be, God, I hate this World Series that I'm picking, but I'm going to go with the Dodgers. And I'm going to go with the Dodgers winning the World Series. God, that's going to be the most boring thing. Dodgers over Houston. Shane, who do you have in your World Series?
I'm going to go with Atlanta.
Atlanta. Are you going to pick the Orioles, Dave, to win it all?
I'm picking Baltimore, yeah.
Wow.
Whoa. Well, I know whose picks I'm rooting for this year.
We will definitely do a reunion show if Dave.
Yeah, we'll have to hit that. We'll do it while we're at the parade if Dave hits on that. You know what? I was gonna save my big Orioles pick for the end of the podcast, and that I was gonna pick them to win the 2025 World Series because I think that's what they will win next year. I think this year they've still got a little bit of work to do, but yeah, anyways. So just to run quickly down, I'm just going to do best bets. I'm not going to roll down the whole thing, but best bets, Dave, St. Louis over, Oakland over, Minnesota over, Texas under, Mets over. Shane, you have Oakland over, Tampa Bay over, Brewers over, Cubs over, and Royals over. I have Brewers over, Mets over, Miami over, Cleveland under, Orioles over. And for our I'll just do divisions. AL East, Shane, you got New York, you got Houston winning the West, you got Minnesota winning the Central. Dave has Baltimore, Houston, Minnesota. I have Baltimore, Texas, Minnesota. For Shane, you've got Atlanta, Cubs, Dodgers. Dave, you have Atlanta, St. Louis Dodgers. I have Atlanta, Reds, Dodgers. Shane has Atlanta winning. Dave has Baltimore winning. And I have the Dodgers winning. So there we go. I managed to stretch this out to almost an hour and 40 minutes. Sorry for the fans. This is bad clock management. I didn't go as quick as last year, but it's been fun again. So let's just all root for Dave's picks to come true, and we'll see you all next year.